Hi, my name is Adam Slavinsky, and this is my final project for Math Modeling 1. Today I'll be talking about fitting functions to approximate numerical solutions. So recently I was traveling, and I was staying at a hotel which had an automatic coffee machine. One could add the provided packaged coffee grounds and water, and any other complications of the coffee making process were removed. And although I don't drink coffee, this piqued my interest to continue to study how difficult brewing coffee can be, specifically about how the placement and concentration of coffee grounds in the filter can prevent water from passing through and creating coffee. An analogous version of this problem can be found through the study of 2D porous mediums, and this area has applications to fluid dynamics, survival analysis, and percolation theory. 2D porous mediums can be represented by a matrix with height n and width m, where a value of 0 within the matrix represents a closed cell, and a value of 1 represents an open cell. And if we take the ratio of the number of open cells to the number of total cells, that ratio p can represent the porosity of the matrix. The most general question that can be posed for this problem is how does the probability that water reaches the bottom of the porous medium depend on these parameters, n, m, and p? And through previous work with 2D porous mediums, a group of peers and myself found that for square matrices, the probability seems to follow a function that is dependent on the size of the matrix. The probability of water reaching the bottom of the porous medium starts very close to 0, then has a spike of varying width and location, and ends very close to 1. So the question that I formed, and the question that will be answered in this project, is can we quantify a function and its constants such that the function matches the numerical solution of the probability that water reaches the bottom of a square 2D porous medium as a function of p and n equals m? To answer this question, we first must have a numerical solution of the probability that water reaches the bottom of a square 2D porous medium. I coded the following MATLAB functions to work together to generate this numerical solution. First, we'll start with generate. Generate takes in the inputs of the width, height, and porosity of a 2D porous medium and creates a 2D porous medium with those properties. To achieve the target porosity, random sampling from the uniform distribution with parameters 0, 1 is compared to the value of p to determine whether or not an individual cell in the matrix is open or closed. And below you see a console call of this function with n equal to m equal to 10 and a porosity of 0.6. Trickle takes in a 2D porous medium and iteratively determines whether or not water can pass from the top to the bottom. The function starts by populating all open cells in the first row with water, and then filling cells row by row according to these rules. If an open cell has a water-filled cell above, to the left, or to the right of it, you'll fill that open cell with water. And rows have to be iterated through from both the left and the right to abide by these rules. Below you see a console call of this function on the matrix produced by generate.m on the previous slide, and it is evident by the values of 2 in the last row that water can pass from the top to the bottom of this porous medium. Flow is the driver code that uses generate and trickle to numerically solve our central question. Given the size of the square matrix and its porosity, flow outputs the probability as a function of p that water can pass from the top to the bottom of a 2D porous medium. This code can be used for a single size of square 2D porous medium, or it can be used for a vector of sizes of square 2D porous mediums. Below you see the graphed output of flow for the vector of dimension sizes from 10 to 100, counting by tens. This result is what was shown in previous work. So these three pieces of code, generate, trickle, and flow, work together to give us numerical solutions of our target probability of square 2D porous mediums. And from here we can build codes on top of that to answer the question for the project. In observing many of these solutions plotted on top of each other, we can see that the solutions are similar to the error in hyperbolic tangent functions. These functions must be transformed to fit within the range 0, 1, and we must place constant parameters within the function that allows control of the location and width of the spike in probability that we see for square 2D porous mediums. So these are going to be our target functions that we try to estimate the numerical solution for. The transformation I chose for hyperbolic tangent and error are as follows. The ranges of these functions originally are from -1 to 1, so if we add 1 to these functions and then scale by a half, that changes the range of the functions to 0 and 1, which is our target range. So we can place the parameters alpha and beta within these functions. The parameter alpha controls the width of the probability spike, The lower the alpha is, the wider that the spike becomes. The parameter beta controls the location of the probability spike, as when the porosity takes the value of beta, the function produces the value of 0.5, or the midpoint of the range. Alpha and beta depend on the size of the matrix, and we will develop the next piece of code to estimate the most accurate values of alpha and beta given these matrix dimensions. Estimate takes in a vector of square matrix dimensions, the bounds of the porosity of interest, which is set to 0 and 1 by default, and the numerical solutions of the target probability given the square matrix dimensions. Values of alpha are chosen to be linearly spaced between 5 and 100, and values of beta are chosen to be linearly spaced between 0.4 and 0.8. All combinations of possible alpha and beta values within these intervals are tested as parameters for the hyperbolic tangent and error functions, and the sum of least squares of the functions is calculated for each alpha and beta pair using the numerical solution from flow. For a given square 2D porous medium, the values of alpha and beta that minimize the sum of squared error are saved as the optimal parameter values. Here's an example demonstrating the function of estimate for a single matrix dimension of n equals m equals 10. We pass in this dimension, the default porosity range, and the numerical solution from flow, and we can see that the code generates a strong match of the functions to the numerical solutions. And below is also a console output of the alpha e and beta e values for the hyperbolic tangent and error functions. Once we have the results of the optimal alpha and beta values given square matrix dimensions n equals m, we must find functions that depend on n equals m that match these results. To do that, we have one final piece of code, estimate2, which performs a similar method to estimate on the alpha sub e and beta sub e values, to fit functions to them as functions of the matrix dimensions m equals n. To do this, we fit both parameters to an inverse tangent function, and place 4 constant parameters, a, b, c, and d, to give a strong fit. With this function and its results, we can finally express the hyperbolic tangent and error functions as functions of just the matrix sizes and the porosity, which achieves our project goal. Here are the results from estimate. On the left, we see the graph of alpha sub e as a function of n equals m for both the hyperbolic tangent and error functions, and on the right, we see the same graph for beta sub e. Note that the beta sub e values are very similar for both graphs because they represent the midpoint of the functions, while the alpha sub e values tend to differ as n equals m increases. Here are the results from estimate 2. We take the output of alpha sub e and beta sub e from estimate and fit the inverse tangent functions to them, as functions of the square matrix dimensions n equals m. The a, b, c, and d values for the inverse tangent functions for alpha sub e and beta sub e for both the hyperbolic tangent and error functions are listed below. So with these two results, from estimate and estimate 2, we can re-express the hyperbolic tangent and error functions from functions of alpha sub e, beta sub e, and p to functions of n equals m and p, and both of these functions are listed below with all constants listed. So both of these functions are approximations of our target probability that water reaches the bottom of a square 2D porous medium with dimensions n equals m and porosity p. Here we validate the results of estimate 2 and show that the inverse tangent functions are a good fit for the alpha sub e and beta sub e values as a function of the matrix dimensions n equals m. On the left we have the plot of alpha sub e, on the right we have the plot of beta sub e. And putting everything together, we can plot the numerical solution from flow for the matrix dimension n equals m equals 10, and we can plot the hyperbolic tangent and error functions as functions of only the matrix dimension and the porosity, and we can see that these functions are a good approximation to the numerical solution for our target probability that water reaches the bottom of a square 2D porous medium. So the main takeaway or conclusion of this project is that these functions allow a user to inquire about the probability that water reaches the bottom of a square 2D porous medium given the matrix dimensions and porosity without having to develop any code or use large simulation. These results can be extended to higher sizes of matrices, and the constants can be found to with greater precision to increase the robustness of the functions. And a second takeaway is that we've quantified similarity in behavior for percolation theory, And this quantification of similar behavior can be used to extend or work with current percolation theory to uncover characteristics or attributes about square 2D porous mediums. From here, an investigation into the reason why these patterns emerge can be conducted, though I bet that would be more heavy into theory than it would be scientific computing. We could also perform this same analysis with a different ratio of n and m besides n equals m. This method could also be extended to 3D by accommodating a third dimension in all parts of the code, although the target functions to fit may be different. And that's the end of my project. Thank you for listening.